and I realized it's six Code Blue shelters somewhere in the county over the last 4 years. So, so the conversation we have tonight is the conversation lots of people have been having over time. You guys are the newest, the infant Code Blue shelter of the county, so it's kind of cool to be in the delivery room with you, so to speak. And so we're gonna talk about three things tonight. If I can leave, sorry.
Yeah. Do you want to get them?
Yeah, I'm sorry, what?
Go ahead. Do you want the manuals?
Oh yeah, the manuals, of course. Yes. We are going to give you your little manual. You can make notes in it. You can put your name on it. There isn't a test, but you can have this. This is very helpful. So we're going to talk about three things: sort of why are we doing the Code Blue shelter, and then the second part is sort of how do we do it? How do we be hosts here in this space? Sort of the qualitative way, and then the last part is sort of the what are the nuts and bolts of that. And so the manual is super important for the nuts and bolts. We won't cover every little part of the pages, but we'll give you sort of the gist of it, and you'll have a sense of what it is that we're doing. So can I also have a copy of that? Thank you. So let's just start with the why. Why are we doing a Code Blue shelter? And I'm going to try to adjust this a little bit. There you go. So, what's your why? From the group here, what are your reasons for doing this? We've mentioned them a little bit or alluded to them a little bit, but Nick, you were saying you have personal experience with that, and some of the other people in the other trainings we did also have family members who have personal experience with being unhoused for a period of time. So it's just real personal, and you want to help the next person. So what are some other reasons why that you want to be a part of this? Go ahead.
I also have had personal experience.
Okay. Why is that I have spent a better part of 10 years outside with people, doing outreach with people, and so I get to know the story, and I get to see how hard it is to survive outside. And I've been with people who have been outside for a year, and then all of a sudden say, I just can't do this today, it's too hard. So when I hear the story and I see how hard it is, then it compels me to want to do something about that. And then the last thing I'll say sort of about values, actually let me ask this question here, and then I'll pull that in. What does hospitality mean to you? The word hospitality, and how do you think the word hospitality applies to a Code Blue shelter? Warmth, yes. Yep.
Open doors.
Literal and emotional. Right, yeah. Right. Both of those things. Welcoming, right. What were you going to say, Eric?
Open doors.
Yeah, open doors,
No
right.
judgment.
No judgment, right.
Just
Yeah.
living with ease, we get to come and just.
Yes, I can relax, I can
Be
let
safe.
go of whatever was
It's okay.
outside. Right, safe. I feel I'm coming into a safe space. Safety is important. We can talk about rules, and you have to obey the rules. What we're saying is we are welcoming you into a space that we all want to be safe for each other. And so that's that part of that value space. If we believe that this is going to be a safe place, and Mark's having a hard time today. I'm calling people names that probably they're not, or I shouldn't be calling them anyway. Or I'm just sort of struggling, I'm agitated. The conversation is about, hey, I'm so glad that you're here. We're welcoming you into this space. It needs to be safe for all of us. How can I help you do that? How can I help you do your part? So safety, all these things are super important to hospitality. It's possible to run a Code Blue shelter and not have that sense of hospitality. To say, well, I'm doing a thing. I said it last night in our committee meeting, but recently a buddy of mine who volunteers at a Code Blue shelter or it's a winter shelter, but it's up in Pottstown. And he said that he was volunteering with another gentleman who was a little bit vexed because he said that the folks weren't quite as grateful as they should be. And somebody said or did something that didn't seem to be very grateful. Like they said they didn't like the food, or I don't know what that circumstance was, but he was a little bit bothered by that. And so my buddy, who is super clear on why he's doing this and the values of hospitality, was trying to talk to him about sort of, this is why we do these things here. And he's a volunteer sort of shaping another volunteer. But these are the foundations, the building blocks on which this whole thing rests. Last year, Lower Marion has a Code Blue shelter, and they were in your shoes right at this time. I was down in Bryn Mawr having this conversation with them. And then after they were open for 1 month, they went from church to church. In their situation, they didn't have a space like this. So they went from church to church, and the pastor of the original host church that first month came the second month, and they had a month under their belt. They were so excited, and she said, we are welcoming people who are not welcome anywhere else in the community. That's what we're doing, and this is how we show up to do that. I think of it as radical hospitality. We're doing it, we're offering welcoming hospitality to people who otherwise wouldn't get it in their day. In my experience, and I've spent some time now, in my experience, when that's my orientation, then when I'm talking with somebody who's struggling, that if I can maintain that sense of radical hospitality, the conversation goes okay. Even if the other person seems pretty wound up or pretty agitated, when I orient myself to, this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm doing it, then what happens next is okay. It may not be happy, but it works out okay. This is the Beacon of Hope, Pasadena Beacon of Hope. This is their tagline. And so I wear this. I wore it tonight on purpose, even though it's a little bit warm in here. But I wear it when I drive on weekends. I drive it for the shelter on the weekends, and I remind myself, Mark, this is your job for the next hour, to drive a bus in such a way that people enjoy that trip, that they're just glad that they're on that bus. But there's a couple of guys who teach me grace. Like they're the kind of people that work on, and so I remind myself that I'm being taught grace today, and the question is whether I'm going to learn it. Okay? But that sense of who you are in that space goes a long way with managing some of those hard moments that sometimes come up. Right? So that's sort of the why part. Let's talk a little bit about the experience of being unhoused and sort of how somebody might come into your space. And some of this is closer to experience than for the rest of us, but what are the things that you're worried about in a day when you arrive here at the end of a day? What has gone on in your day? What's the experience of being unhoused like? What are the parts that go into it, or do you imagine the parts going into it?
Worrying, food,
Right.
am I safe?
Yes. Okay.
What's tomorrow going to bring?
There's stress,
Yeah.
right? And then here's the checklist of things that add to stress.
Mm-hmm.
Can you get your basic needs met? Are you getting food? What will happen tomorrow? Am I safe? Is it safe for me to be here? For some people, coming into a new place, like, will it be safe there? I haven't experienced it, but you're really wired for, I need to protect myself, and I need to manage my own safety. What else?
Use the bathroom.
Yes, right. Probably shouldn't say this on camera. When COVID happened, most of us got locked in, and the people who were living outside got locked outside of all of the things that they were using to meet their needs, including bathrooms. And so we went on a porta potty tour of the county and said, poop happens, but where? That's the, not that word, but that's for the camera. But it happens, but where does it happen? And how do we make arrangements for that? So just those basic needs. A woman on the porta potty tour, I met a woman who had previously in Lansdale, who had previously been homeless and experienced homelessness, and she said, before you lay your head down, you have to decide where you want to put your rear end. And then she said, what I mean by that is, when you wake up, how far are you going to walk to a bathroom? And what happens if you don't think you can make it that far? She said it's one of the hardest parts of living outside for her. So those are the things that people have in their head when they come in. to us. Looking for places to stay warm during the day. Being a part of the community. People feel invisible when they're outside. There was a person I was talking to a number of years ago who took a youth group, a group of young people into, it was a city setting, but it was like a mission, and they were serving dinners to people. And there was a guy who was sitting at a table, he was just staring at his food. He wasn't eating, but he was sitting sort of alone at the table. And one of the young women at the youth group went up to him and said, "Do you not like the food? Can I bring you something else?" And he looked up and he said, "I've not eaten all day. And I would go another day without eating if someone would just sit and talk to me." So she did. To her credit, she just sat down. But to feel invisible or to feel disconnected from community. And then sometimes being outside, for some folks, they get community outside. And so then the choice to come inside is, do I leave the people? Do I come inside? Managing belongings. I'll skip ahead to one of the what parts. If Mark shows up with like my personal stuff, we have bins that we're going to have people put their things into a bin. If I bring a bike, if I bring more things, we have space in the garage next door where people can put that stuff overnight. It can be locked so people can know that their belongings are safe while they're inside. Because safety is really, warmth, welcome, safety is what we're about. And then the idea of entering a shelter is not always an easy choice. Maybe I'm struggling with depression, maybe I've had some traumatic experience. Some folks have pets, or they have somebody else that they're worried about and they don't want to come in there because they don't want to be separated by them. The reason that this is important is because when I show up at the door, I've already decided that it's worth it for me to come in, which means I'm invested in being here. Okay? Sometimes people think, well, that I could care less, or maybe I'll come in, or maybe I'll go. But really, it takes something from me to be willing to come inside. And so I really want to be inside. And that's been the experience of most of the folks who've opened up other shelters. It's just people are just grateful to be inside for all of the reasons that we just described. What's the difference? So the how part. We're going to talk a little bit just about sort of what our interaction is like. What's the difference between being transactional and being relational?
Transactional, you're just trying to get the job done.
Right. There's an interaction where we're just going to right. And then what does relational sound like, or feel like, or look like?
To me, it involves listening.
Yeah, okay, there's listening, and you said that, that's one of the values that you brought up. People just need to be heard and listened to. Yeah, and you were going to say?
Personal interaction.
Yeah, personal interaction. So when Mark comes in the door, and it's raining or whatever, and there are some things that need to get done, not immediately, but in the first part, where we have to ask Mark some questions, and there's a questionnaire that the county wants us to ask people about. If I was transactional, I'd say, "Thanks for coming in. I got some questions to ask you," and then I would proceed to just read the questions. That's transactional. Relational is, "Hey, Mark, wow, I'm so glad you're here. And can you come inside? We got some coffee here. Why don't you sit down? Why don't you dry off a little bit? Why don't you put your stuff right there? Can we hang out?" Then we're going to do how did you get through today? How are you feeling today? What kind of day was it for you? You're going to just engage in conversation, and then we're going to let's get you settled. There's a couple things we need to do to get you settled, it's clear, right? When we talk about it that way, we say, well, our value is we're extending hospitality, we're welcoming. That affects how we have the conversation with folks. This part here is the most important part. You guys will figure out, how do I get, what are all the things I need to do, and what do I need to write down? Those things will happen with practice, and we'll go over some of the real important ones yet tonight. But the how of this makes the difference for you as a person helping, and it makes the difference for me as a person coming in and experiencing your hospitality.
Transactional dehumanizes people.
Yes.
It turns them into
Yeah.
something on a paper
Yeah.
rather than a relationship with a human being.
Yeah.
There's also, feels like a power imbalance.
Yeah.
Yes. Right. Yes. And so that comment about somebody should be more grateful. That's really a power imbalance statement when you think about it. I'm going to play this. This is 2 minutes long, but this is a really cool. Brene Brown. I don't know if you've heard of her or not, but she's a pretty cool person. But this is just a short clip on empathy and sympathy, and it also helps us sort of underscores the whole idea of relational.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, I'm down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, huh? No. You want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. I had it, yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. At least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
Any thoughts? Anything jump out at you in
We're not here to make things better for a person telling us the story.
that? Yeah. And so one of the things that I found to be hard is when I'm listening to somebody's story, or when they're leaving in the morning and they have to go back out, and all the stress things that you were talking about sort of come back out a little bit. Like, how am I going to get through the day? What am I going to do? It's hard sometimes to bear witness to that. And it's hard to not feel like I have to make it better. And sometimes you can't, but it's super valuable to just have been present with a person in that space and to give them a little bit of that connection. So that was a really important takeaway for me. Oftentimes, I feel like I have to say the right words. And you heard her say, I don't know what to say to that. That sounds hard. But I'm glad you told that to me. I'm glad I could hear that from you. I'm glad you shared that with me. Those are very powerful words, even though usually when we say those things, we feel a little inept. But actually, they're very powerful things. I think one of the things, too, about engagement, which is sort of the way in which we connect with people, the way we show the values of hospitality, It's also the foundation for how you de-escalate, how you make things calmer, is that connection. That feels counterintuitive sometimes to people, like, oh, I have to tell them to stop, or I have to give them an if-then. If this is the way it's going to be, then you're going to have to leave. And that actually makes things worse, or it tends to escalate things. The de-escalation really is that engagement, an engagement part. And the last part of that slide there, it's about presence and emotional safety, vulnerability, and connection. So I want you to turn, most of the manual is about what the what's, the nuts and bolts, but I want you to turn to page 11 and 12, because it goes into a little acknowledging that something is hard and not defending it. Apologizing for something that somebody may have perceived to be something that was happened to them, or something. Just you don't have to apologize for something you don't intend to, but you can say, wow, I'm sorry that this is happening, or I'm sorry that this is the way you've experienced it. And you're just acknowledging through an apology that this is hard for them. Agreeing. Agreeing is helpful, particularly when somebody's getting upset and bothered, and you just say, well, I can see why that's a really hard thing. You're not telling them they're right. You're not saying we ride at dawn. You're not none of that. You're just saying, yeah, I agree that this is a really hard thing. And then not being defensive, inviting criticism even if you don't think it's really that well earned. You're doing your best. A couple weekends ago, I was driving with my sweatshirt to remind me, and there's a guy who came out, and he's just a grumpy guy, and I've known him for a couple years, and he ranges from really grumpy to less grumpy, but he doesn't really move out much past that. And so that particular morning, he was on the more grumpy side. And as he was coming out to get onto the bus, and it's one of those short buses with the little, I get to drive a bus. And I open the door like that, and the door's open, and he took his coffee, threw like the coffee out, and then threw the cup just right under the bus. And we're on a street in front of a church. We're trying to be nice to the neighbors and like the whole thing. And everybody was on the bus and watched it. And a couple people were like, oh man, and like they were on him a little bit. He's a person who struggles with some mental health issues. And so I think he hears voices, like there's some things that are going on in his head that sort of get him there, honestly. But I could have said, Frank, you need to pick that up. Frank, we're trying to keep the neighborhood okay. I could have said a lot of things like that. I could have given him an if-then statement. What I did was I got up and walked around, picked it up in front of him. And just, I took it and threw it in the trash can. I didn't say a word, except, actually what I did manage to say was, it's good to see you today. And then we all got on the bus, but other people saw that, oh, okay, this is all right. That's a really simple form of de-escalation, but it's like not making an issue out of something that doesn't have to be an issue. And saying we're gonna all try to collectively extend grace to each other. That kind of thing, although it seems too simple, is actually the way that people feel okay, feel safe, and manage to sort of pull themselves up a little bit and marshal their energy to be okay. Right? The rest of the trip was fine. We muttered a little bit, but we were okay. So take that home, but these are just really basic fundamental things that are super effective for people. And this manual actually came from was adapted from a manual from Trinity Lutheran, who's been doing this for close to 20 years. And so they practice all of these things that we've talked about, and this has been an effective tool for them. I just want to, on this slide, so let me also just say, there's a longer training that was done for the county by the mobile crisis team, who also works at Access Services. And They did a longer one, it was on Zoom and it's recorded, and we have the link of that. So we're trying to keep track of everybody who's been to these trainings so that we can send it out to everybody. So you can look at that, it's more of what we talked about. I gave you the Cliff Notes version, but there's a lot more of that, you can participate in it. But one of the things that this slide comes from there, and one of the things they talk about is how do we help create sort of ownership from the group. So it's not just me as a volunteer, that sort of that power thing that you were talking about. How can we just come together and agree that we're gonna have some agreements? I used to do take some youth, at-risk youth on expedition camping, and we had guy rules. What are the guy rules? And it's just sort of a contract. Like don't hit each other, right? So what are the rules? And these are guys. They're going to be coming in here. So what are the man rules for that, for the shelter that we can agree that we're gonna do? And some of those will be gone over in the sort of, these are the rules of the shelter. But there's a difference between hearing rules and agreeing to abide by them and saying I'm part of a group that's creating some stuff together. And so what are some words that we might use when we want to promote a sense of group ownership?
Power.
Yeah. Welcome to the space that we're all in together, right? Our space together.
A lot of these things in here about how to interact with people would apply with us interacting with each other.
Right. We are more the like than we are different in the world, right? So that's true. Yeah. And then, so we want to create a sense where we're all here and we're all welcome, and we're also owning a little bit of the responsibility for keeping it okay for everybody. The Lansdale group has said, they said we just let everybody know if there's a fight that requires the police to come, then we're closing down tonight, everybody leaves. He said that's never happened. But guys will say, hey, simmer down over there, Eric, because I'm not leaving tonight. Right? So that's what we're talking about in terms of setting clear expectations. This is what but it's not, if you do this, then you'll have to leave. It's, we need this together because this is how we create a good space for all of us that we can all be in. Right? And we're going to help each other do that. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah? All right. So, some expectations. There's expectations for us as volunteers, there's expectations for the guests. Just sort of how we manage ourselves. We talked a lot about that, how we orient ourselves to this and how we show up is helpful. If we're having a hard day or there's a particular guest that one of us is having a hard time with for whatever reason, saying to the other person, hey, you want to step in there, or me seeing something and saying, hey, Nick, let me get this, I got this. Okay? Connection outside the shelter. So it's possible that you will see somebody that you will also see outside of this space. And we just have to be aware that happens. And really the reason we're putting this here is to say when you're outside, this is the way you're helping them. You don't need to feel like I gotta help somebody outside of this. So you see Mark down at the Turkey Hill and I say, hey, can you give me a ride back up into Pennsburg? You don't have to do that. You might feel awkward about that, but it's important that you sort of just establish, there's things I can do to help you, and there's other things that I really am not gonna be able to do to help you. One of the things that we have, we're gonna have a list of resources that are on the board here. But one of the things is the open link, so people can get a lot of their resource needs met at the open link. So you can say the way I'm helping you is letting you know about how to connect with somebody at the open link. The giving and receiving of gifts. Don't feel like you need to give anybody anything. In fact, it's probably better if you don't. It's if you're just keeping that to this is the space that this is the way, this is the space I'm working with you, help you, and this is the way I'm helping you. One of the things that I do, because I do a lot of outreach work, is I carry things with me that I feel comfortable giving away. So it's usually food and water, something simple. seasonal things. So like at this time of year, I'll start having, gloves. Gloves are like, if you have gloves, that's gold for somebody who's been outside and lost one of theirs where their gloves got wet or something like that. So gloves or a scarf or a hat, socks. And so when somebody asks me for something, I don't carry money. I don't have much money, so it's not hard to not carry it. But I don't carry money and I don't give money normally because then it just becomes a boundary thing that's harder for me to manage. And so I don't have that, but here's what I do have, and here's what I can offer you. Do you know about the shelter? Do you know about the open link? So can I connect people with other ways to get their needs met? The language. How do we refer to our guests?
Guess.
Guests is right. Welcome. You're a guest. Think of it. You are the front desk of the Marriott Hotel, and they're coming for the experience of this is a destination. Code blue. It's not actually. These people are your neighbors. We're not bussing them in. We had that conversation before. But that's how we refer to you. You are a guest here. One of the things that's also helpful is what should I call you? There's a gentleman in another shelter who goes by several different names, and I called him by one name for a really long time because that's what I thought it was, and that's what he had told me. And then I discovered somebody else was calling him a different name. I'm like, who's that guy? And I'm like, him. And I'm like, oh. So I had to go to him and say, what do you like now? Right here today, which name should I be calling you? And it doesn't always stay exactly the same, but knowing what names people like to be described with is helpful. So expectations for our volunteers, expectations for the guests. Language, I'm sort of a closet swear monkey, so my tolerance for language is sort of up here. Yours might be a little bit less, but language is pretty, unless it's aggravating somebody else, and then it's a social contract thing. Hey, we're all trying to have a good time here. We're trying to be safe in this space. Use of substances. There's no substance use or drugs and alcohol on the property. If Mark is under the influence of something, and I can enter the space, and I can sort of be okay in it. If I can go upstairs and sleep. It's really about can I manage myself in this space, not what did I do before I got here. I'll show you at the end. We'll show you Narcan. Narcan is sort of like having an AED machine. You don't need it most of the time, but when you do, it's the right thing for the job. But it's one of those things that folks get a little fearful of. In my understanding, over the last several years, no one has needed to have Narcan in a shelter. Like people who sometimes are in a shelter have been given Narcan other places, but not in the shelter. So it's a simple response to the situation if it were to arise. I'll go through that with you at the end. Leaving and entering. So we come in, the doors open at 8. And that's when you're going to welcome Mark at the front door, some coffee, sit down and dry off, warm up. When Mark shows up at 7, the door's still open at 8, and that feels a little bit awkward, but I think the language is we're just going to get things ready for everybody. And after a time or two, then I'll sort of get used to that. But that just helps me. Otherwise, just people show up earlier and earlier, and then it's just hard to manage. People come in, and the lights are out and the doors are locked at 11. And so then I'm in. If I decide that I cannot be in, I'm leaving. Right? So that's part of the things that we'll be going over with the person, with Mark, when I come in. And then the leaving is at 8 o'clock because we need to wait until the nearby kids. The kids are in the nearby school before people leave.
To smoke until 11, but after 11 they can't go out to smoke.
I've seen other Code Blue shelters that they take donations of food and then actually eat, which would be before. Is there any consideration of that?
Eating?
Well, yeah, like we could provide dinner or something like that.
Yes, there will be. So that's part of the intake procedure. They're going to come in, be warmly welcomed with coffee, hot, and whatever drinks. And then we have an intake procedure where we have to answer questions that the county wants answered. Plus we have our own little intake sheet. And then, get people comfortable and have a meal. So there will be a meal every night. And
So 8 o'clock isn't too late to open
no, it's, well,
so you're
no.
eating 9 o'clock or something?
You're eating at
Yeah,
9,
yeah.
or if you come at 10:30, you're gonna eat at 10:30 if you wanna
Yeah,
eat.
yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
then, yeah,
And so like Trinity opens also at 8, and people are used to a stylishly late dinner at 9.
there you go.
I went one time. I stopped in for something, and it was a football game. It was a championship game, and I had to go home. But all the guys are like, by that time I knew them. They're like, "Come on, sit down." So my wife calls me, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm watching the game with the boys." And we were eating dinner. So that's the way it happens here. Yeah.
And then there will also be breakfast in the morning that they can either eat here before 8 or take with them.
Yeah.
So,
People can use the facilities. People can use the showers here. At this point, we're laundering linens, but we're not laundering personal items. Responsibilities of the belongings. When Mark comes in, my stuff will go in a tote, and then the tote will be stored in the storage room, which will be locked. That doesn't. If I need something, I would wake you up, or you will be awake. I would wake up and come and say, I need this, and then you'll help me do that. But that's part of that safety, the group sort of safety. We know that everybody's stuff is, nobody can get my stuff, nobody can take my stuff. Like I can't say somebody stole my stuff, right? So it's just it's a sort of a group contract around safety. Things like medication. If you have medication, I'm going to say to you, well, when are you going to take it? And do you need it overnight? Is it an inhaler, or is it just a regularly scheduled medication? And we're going to try to figure out how to take that medication at scheduled time and store it in your bin so that it doesn't get lost, and somebody else doesn't pick it up, somebody else doesn't decide it's valuable somewhere else. So we're going to, for the most part, we're going to keep people's things in those totes. Things I need to have with me, like a cell phone, that kind of thing. That's fine, and I would take them with me to where I'm going to sleep. But the management of belongings here will be in those totes. And then if there's additional stuff, I have a cart where I have a bike or I have something bigger that can't come into the house, we can put that in the garage. And that's under a lock, and the key, and the key can decide where the key's gonna be. Okay.
there's also no firearms or weapons of any kind in the building for volunteers or guests. And we have been kind of mandated by the borough to do actually a wand check of all of our guests, which we're going to do privately during the intake.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be when you walk in the door.
Yeah. So that sort of brings us up. We've been moving into a little bit of the nuts and bolts. So why don't we just sort of land there? So do you want us? We've started to talk about it, but Mark shows up at the door. Do you want to just walk us through that first process?
Sure.
And go ahead.
We're still working out the nuts and bolts, but basically when somebody comes, they're welcomed, as you said, and offered something to drink. The intake shift, which is 7:30 to 11,
And that's on page 25 of your manual.
we'll have 3 people. And after a period of, warmth and getting to know you, then one person will take the guest into this front room
Right here.
for intake. And the county's intake system is pretty complicated. However, it only has to be done once.
Right.
And our intake system is very simple. It's basically, who are you, and, you know, yeah, it's pretty simple. But anyway, you would do that with the guest, and then at that time, give the person a bin and anything they might want to store. And then after all of that is finished, then they can come in, eat, and they have till 11 o'clock. And during that time, they can take a shower, they can not take a shower, they can watch TV. There are lots of games and activities, you know, they just hang out. And then at 11, it's lights out at 11, so I'm assuming like at 10 up, pretty much you would be like, okay, it's time to go up. And
Yeah.
of course, during that time, they would have to get their beds ready, you know, just be prepared to go to bed at 11.
Yeah.
11 o'clock, lights out. And, go ahead.
Well, if we did, let's hold on to that process. So one of the things when you take me into the front room to sort of talk through the intake and then sort of, this is so I understand the rules of the space. The language of that. So first of all, your business is your business. I have some questions that I'm going to ask that we're asked to ask of you because we want to put them in a database. That database is private. Nobody sees that. But you do not feel, you don't have to answer a question if you don't want to answer. So we're just doing our best job to, you know, get data. It is important for the county to have as good data as possible about who's outside. And so that's sort of what that's about.
I think that's really an important point. Like, you know, you might have 3 John Does
Yeah.
in a night, and it's okay. The other thing is that during the intake, we have a guest agreement sheet that we will need to read to the guests, and they have to sign it. And I think that would be a deal breaker if they don't sign it. And because that is basically saying, you know, I'm not gonna get into any fights, I don't have any drugs on me, you know, those kinds of things. So, that's also part of the intake.
And again, the presentation of that is, hey, in this space, we just need to all be getting along so that everybody can be safe. So here's a couple of guidelines for how that's going to work. Are you okay? Are you down with that? Can you agree to that? Just sign it here so that we just know that we're both on the same page here. That's one of those spaces that could feel really power over. Have like a power difference.
Yeah.
Unless we word that, and this is a welcoming thing, this is just how we are going to have a really cool evening tonight. I'm so excited that you're here.
So that also this 7:30 shift, you'll be here before any guests arrive. So being the first people, you turn up the heat, you decide who in the group is the shift leader. And really that is only the person who, if you have an issue, you call somebody, and we'll let you know every night who the administrator on duty is. There will always be someone on duty that you can call. And Mark and Street Act, you know, there are lots of agencies will have a phone list that you can call. But there has to be someone designated as a shift leader, and everybody's like, oh, I don't want to be a leader. But it's really not. It's just the person who's going to be doing the calling. And then you would have to decide, okay, well, there's soup in the freezer and there's a lasagna. What do you want to take out for dinner tonight? And take that out and get it heated up so that when people come at 8 o'clock, there will be food. And there may only be 2 people, but there might be food for 10. So you don't know that, so you have to heat it all up, and then when they leave the next day, you have takeout. You know, you could give food away. And then you would start the coffee, start the tea, that kind of thing. You just want to prepare the space for the people who are coming.
And then the overnight shift is pretty straightforward. Those are the subsequent pages.
Yeah, and the overnight people will be doing walkthroughs regularly. We haven't decided how often that should be, but we'll let you know. And also,
you'll hear people, like if you hear something, go find out
Yeah.
if somebody's okay, right? But I mean, this isn't a huge space, and the floors are creaky, so like, you know.
I'm just gonna say that they're
The
very
bones in the old house will rattle, and you'll say, oh, Mark needs something up there, right?
and also I'm thinking that maybe the overnight people will be doing the laundry and doing anything that, you know, could
Keep
be.
them awake.
You're gonna have,
Right,
you're gonna have
right. I
time.
worked awake
You're
overnight,
gonna
and they
have
were
plenty
calling
of
me, you
time.
found everything you could do to stay awake,
Yeah.
right, right?
Yeah, so,
So like there'll be multiple sets of linen, you might do the previous nights,
yeah,
so it's prepared for that night, something like that.
yeah, so we're hoping that what's going to happen is at the last shift, people will gather their linens and put it into their bin, because there might be a code blue the next night and they'll be back and they can use the same linens. And so then, if there is a code blue night and they don't come back, then we
That will
know
be
that
washed,
that
yeah.
has to be laundered. You know, we'll have that kind of a system of, and enough, hopefully enough sheets and linens that we can, you know, we can
Keep rotating.
just keep rotating.
Is there gonna be towels too?
Yes.
There are. And we have a washer and a dryer in the laundry room, plenty of laundry, so hampers to put dirty linens in.
Michelle and Lori, another administrator, have been like the gurus of supplies. I can't believe it. I
There have been a
mean,
million man hours into this
I
project,
mean,
right?
and they are the most
Right.
organized people I know.
Oh, and yes, there's notebooks.
What's that?
There's notebooks, the notebooks that with, if you need a supply or.
Oh, right, right,
Yeah,
right.
and they're back there, right?
They are in the
Yeah.
storage room right behind that TV.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Right,
So
and
if the house was low in supplies.
Yeah.
what you're saying, okay.
You just know,
Right.
you just know you use these supplies and then she
Right,
keeps
it's
track of it.
very
Yeah.
self-explanatory.
She's the
yeah.
quartermaster of this whole.
she really is. Yes.
Yeah,
And if you come up with an idea for something we should be stocking and we're not, there are blank forms back there, just write what you think we need.
Yeah,
We
so
think we thought of a lot, but obviously as we start
things,
moving along, we'll realize there's things we forgot.
Clarification on the bins. You
Yeah.
have 10 bins?
oh, yeah.
So if you have 10 bins and a person, and you know there's gonna be a code blue the next night, so that's why they're leaving their linens in there,
yeah.
in the bin. But everything, all of their personal belongings have to go?
Yes, yes, they
Yeah,
have
so we're
to,
not storing anything.
Any of their
Right,
belongings?
no storage.
Right, so that might be a question that Mark asks. There's a code blue tonight, I will see you in 12 hours.
Mhm.
Why can't I just leave my crap here,
Yeah.
right? So, it's just, we just can't take responsibility for storing.
And that would be the same with anything placed in the storage shed?
Yeah, yeah, it's gotta
Yes.
go, it's gotta go with you.
Otherwise, things could build up.
Yes.
Right, and they do, it just has
Yeah,
a way of
yeah,
that happening, and then also, we just don't want, it's partly for their protection too, because we don't want something to get lost, responsible for whether we knew that it was there or didn't, like, it just, we get into something that's just hard to manage. So it's just for everybody's.
Even the bins, are they gonna have a number or
Well,
a
yeah, we'll
name
put
or
a tape,
something that
piece
they'll
of
put on
tape
it?
with their
Their name,
name, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, we'll identify.
With a
it.
room number maybe, because then you don't have to keep replacing it. If you put their name on it. Just a thought.
But we'll have multiple people.
People in the
Yeah,
room.
it's
Yeah.
definitely,
Yeah.
yeah, everybody doesn't have their own
There's
room.
no
We're only open during the code blue is declared.
That's right.
It says here, if a code blue is declared, which we're not open if it isn't declared, police require us to be open all night. What does that mean?
So, go ahead.
Well, I think that is up for,
Yeah, so what it means is, and I don't think it's gonna happen, but, I mean, it might happen the first couple times. It takes a little bit for this to catch on, and so the first night you show up here and you're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and then you don't have any guests, and you feel like, oh, despondent about that. Don't be. We're building it as it goes. It happened in Lower Marion that way. The first couple code blues, they didn't have anybody, and they're like, we did all this prep, we're here. And then one guy showed up, and there was like 4 volunteers, and that man was treated like and word got out, if you go there, man, they take such good care of you. And then it just took off. It takes a minute for everybody to understand, number one, it's happening, and number two, oh, Mark tried it, he liked it, and it's a good, and it's safe. You can go there, it's a cool place to be.
Now, in our case, we're of course working with the Open Link, and they are a social service agency, and they are working closely with at least 10 people, I think 7 to 10 people they know who may come to the shelter. So I don't know whether we'll have any nights where we won't have anyone, but the other thing is that after 11 o'clock, if anybody shows up at our door, we cannot take them in unless they are escorted by a police officer.
Okay.
So let's say we don't have anyone, but at midnight, police pick somebody up and they want to bring them to the Code Blue shelter. That's why we have to be.
So some of the agreements for all of this to happen were agreements with the borough and with the police to say, well, how can we be helpful to you? And the police are saying, hey, if I pick up somebody, I need to know I can bring them someplace. Because otherwise, I have this person in my squad car, I can't leave them outside, it's too cold, it's dangerous, but I don't know what to do with them. So that's part of that arrangement. So part of our customer base is the community and the police force.
Does that only count if until we're at capacity?
Yes, so a couple things. A woman shows up, or I have a pet, or there's some, like, you can't bring me in for some reason. We have an arrangement with the Code Blue shelter in Quakertown. They can take women. They can take couples too.
Well, they can take couples, but they sleep separately.
Right, they separate, but they can, so if Mark and my spouse show up, and I say, well, she can't get in, we can send you over to Quakertown. So that's our first sort of line of defense.
Yeah, we
We
can
say how you
send.
send them.
Yeah.
So remember, it's 8 miles, I think. But so get started now, Eric. This is where you make a phone call. So somebody comes in, they don't get turned away at the door. Please come in, sit down, welcome. We're going to have you right there while we sort this. And then that's that phone number. That's that phone call to the backup, and then
The administrator on call who will figure it out.
right. Yeah. So that's a great example of, wow, this is a thing. I don't know what to do. I need a wingman. That's the administrator on call, and you make that call, and then they work with.
It's their headache.
Right. So well, let's just also talk about a couple other things that happen in that sort of, you need help. How do you get it? So that's the first call. The street outreach team is responsible for a lot of those gaps on a Code Blue night. So if somebody, for some reason, we decide, I have a pet, and I also have an ambulation problem or whatever. So the street outreach team might decide to go ahead and put me in a hotel. They will figure out how to do that. They will figure out how to get me to that hotel. So the phone call would be to the administrator backup, who will say, let's call street outreach, and that number will be posted, and then we pass that information on. If Mark's just having a really hard time and it looks like I'm just not well, and it seems like having mental health eyes on that would be helpful, that's the mobile crisis team. Again, you're not sure, make a phone call, we'll sort that out with you. But that's the mobile crisis, is a 24/7 hotline. They can talk to you, they can talk to the person, they can come mobile if that's something that would be helpful.
So if somebody comes and you feel the need to call the administrator on call, and they call what do you call it, the street
outreach.
Street outreach. That could be a half an hour, 45 minutes. Can they come in?
Oh yeah.
You can let them in.
The goal is to help them be safe inside and warm and hospitality,
Yeah.
if that's a word. And while this is all sort of happening,
So
Do they
that
have to
was,
stay in there? Do they have to stay in the
Yeah.
kitchen? Or like, I mean, is there any type of rule?
They don't get a bed.
they don't get.
Yeah, they don't get a
They
bed.
They
don't
don't go
get
upstairs,
it.
they can use the
Right.
bathroom.
Yeah,
Yeah, oh,
they do
sure.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
They just don't get a bed.
Do they
Right,
have
right.
to sign the agreement?
No,
No, they're just, you're here, we're extending, like, this is the hotel lobby, come in, sit down,
Yeah.
you look hungry, why don't you eat something, geez, we have too much food. So it's, and also, you just brought it up really nicely, like, this is the way these things happen. Just think, my job here is to be hospitable. Like err on the side of just being really nice and kind, and that's what we're shooting for.
It's probably the same type of thing where we make the call, but what if somebody shows up with a minor child?
Sure, that would be a call to, the backup can help you with that, but that would be street outreach, and street outreach will handle that because Quakertown is also not a family
They don't
shelter,
take
so,
kids.
but that's a great example of somebody who would be hoteled by the street outreach team. They will figure out how to make that happen, they will follow up with that family first thing tomorrow to plan for the next night. Sometimes, if it takes that, it's a multiple day code blue, people will be hoteled for a little bit.
Are there any family shelters in Montclair?
Yes, there are. And I forget what the total bed capacity is, but there's one in Pottstown, there's one in Norristown, there's at least one or two others. Those are all full all the time. But during COVID, yes, and there's a waiting list.
I mean, you can't get into
Yes,
those. Yeah.
there's a crazy waiting list in Montgomery County for all the shelters. So,
They're not just code blue shelters.
so they're open all the time. But during the code blue, they have additional space.
Okay.
That because it's emergency, so they create additional space. It's limited, but a lot of those situations end up becoming the job of street outreach, which lives in the gap. We just like, we don't know what to do, so they are responsible for figuring out safety planning for that.
That's one of the beauty of, I think, of this shelter is our connection with the Open Link. Because they really are trying to get people all the services that they can. And so working with them, we really
Yeah,
are
right.
lucky.
Yeah, so in real life in this scenario, that mother and child might end up in a hotel that street outreach has put them in, and street outreach will follow up the next day, and that might be a connection back to the Open Link. Right? So here's some things that we can do. What are the other service providers in the area, and what can we do? Oftentimes that's not an immediate thing, but at least we have somebody in our pipeline going towards something.
How do we decide who's gonna volunteer that any given code blue evening?
So, after tonight, you will get a sign-up genius. You have to have I'm assuming all of you have registered through the Open Link, and you have to get your clearances, come to the training. And then you'll receive a sign-up genius, which will ask you to sign up for shifts. Now, we're hoping that people will say, okay, I can do Tuesday nights from 2 to 5. I mean, that's a real wish. And because I'm open, and sign up for the entire season for Tuesday nights, except maybe this one and this one when I know I'm gonna be out of town. So you'll be able to do that all through Sign Up Genius, and, however you wish.
And you wanted to mention about women not taking the shift alone.
Yes, so every shift has to have a man.
And at least
so,
2 per shift, 2 people.
So 3 people on the first and the fourth shift, and 2 people on the second and third.
And what are the shift hours?
So the first shift is 7:30 to 11, and then 11 to 2, 2 to 5, 5 to 8:30. So the opening and closing shifts are 3.5 hours, the other ones are 3 hours. And the middle 2 shifts are pretty similar. You're the night awake person, basically. But
Night manager.
yeah, but the last shift is also the shift where you've got to get people up and moving and cleaned up and,
Do you have a
know,
timing on
and
that?
ready to
Do you have a
go.
wake-up call?
7 o'clock, I think,
Seven,
yes.
yeah.
But they can't leave the building
Until
until 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
They're not allowed to leave per the borough.
Is
Oh.
that the only time that they're not allowed to leave?
How
Because
can you not
can't-
let them leave?
Yeah, that's what I
The
was.
borough does not want them
Yeah, so this was a
You said
concession.
after 11 too. Like,
Yeah.
Once,
Right, so
At
between 11 and
They
8,
could leave after 11, right?
They
They
just
just wouldn't be
can't
able to
come
come
back.
back in.
Yeah.
That's right.
But we're saying from 7 to 8, you're saying you can't even go out this door?
So how about to have a smoke?
You can go out to have a
That's
smoke.
not- you just
but
can't leave it, you can't. So,
can't leave.
How do you
there's a-
stop them?
There's a new, well, like if I were to just say, yeah, I'm out,
Yeah.
then we would have to have a conversation in the next code blue night, about, you know,
Following,
right. and-
following your agreement. you
Right,
said,
and the reason for this is because the borough gave us permission to do this, and what they said, one of their stipulations was, you can't leave till after 8 because of the traffic and the kids going to school, and we're just trying to respect everybody else in the community, and the concerns related to that. So it's not your personal rule, it's not even, you know, the coalition's rule or the Code Blue Shelter rule, it's just our accommodation of the community at large.
There are a lot of walkers, even though there's no sidewalks that
Yeah.
kids go down the
Yeah.
street.
Yeah, so we're just trying to be good neighbors and,
Yeah.
and accommodate that. Mark, if you feel like you cannot do that, then the next time, if you want to come back, we just need to have a talk about how that might be different next time.
Yeah,
Where will they be smoking?
the back porch.
Back porch.
Yeah.
There is a front
Well,
porch too, isn't there?
actually the side. There's a.
there's
Oh, it's wraparound.
There's an ashtray
I'm
tower.
a smoker, so
And
I see
Adirondack.
them wherever.
So we're just gonna put a sign, smokers follow Nick.
We put those things on the side so that other people didn't need to walk through.
Okay.
For people
Okay.
that don't smoke,
Yeah.
Okay, that's great.
essentially it's outside there.
I was
rather than where you come
thinking
in.
that people would not be sort of on display if they're in the back, but that's fine. I think wherever
It was
Wherever
a
they
non-smoker's
smoke.
judgment
Yeah.
call. I have a question. I think I know the answer, but I may not. So you're doing the 11 to 2 shift, is it, that's a shift, right, 11 to 2? And no one shows up for the next shift?
yeah, that was gonna be my question. How are we gonna fill those?
So,
The volunteer stays.
Administrator on call?
so administrator on call has to be called, and they have to scramble, and if they can't find somebody, they're gonna come and they're gonna have to fill it.
But
Is
that's
this
only one. Like if nobody comes at 2 and you
Oh,
call
if
me as
nobody-
administrator on call,
Yeah,
I will hightail it over here, but
and then you would,
one of the
You would-
earlier shifts would
you
have to
would
stay.
find another administrator on, not, you know,
A
we're
backup
gonna
on
have a
call.
list
Right.
of phone numbers
Phone
that
chain.
you can call.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you just call anybody and everybody, and even the volunteer coordinators, and say, is there anybody who has offered to be on call? You know, we're hoping for that too, that maybe there are volunteers who will volunteer to be on call.
I was thinking that volunteers here would just stay.
They can do that too, but you
So
know,
if
If
you
they
called
can.
me, if you called me and
can.
said, if you called me and said, hey, I'm here, my backup has not showed, the next shift has not showed, I would just say, hey,
Any
how,
chance you can
how are,
stay?
yeah, right, I'm getting in my truck, I'm driving now, but any chance you can stay.
Mhm.
And then, and feel, and I would also say, and feel no pressure, you may go. But-
Yeah,
Right, I'm just
Well-
asking you, yeah.
And I see there's decaf coffee, you'll have caffeinated
Right.
coffee.
Yeah.
Take that out.
I'll owe you big, what kind of Cinnabon do you want? Right.
Do you have a,
We have both kinds to answer your
Okay.
a
question.
breakdown of the volunteers by male, female?
I don't, I think the volunteer coordinators do.
It just
So-
feels like there's gonna be a challenge with men, I mean, judging from what I've seen,
Yeah.
not just this meeting, but
Yeah,
Is
Just-
that having worked in a jail, is it the coalition's or is it the borough's policy that it is a male and female? I'm just asking, I'm not
Yeah.
trying to challenge
Yeah.
rules, I'm just curious.
Well, I
It
think
was the
we,
coalition.
yeah,
decision
we
early on.
decided that early on
Mhm.
with sort of the understanding that once we get into this
Mhm.
and recognize actually what we're into and
Makes
doing,
sense.
Right, yeah.
that
More
might
comfortable.
loosen up a
Okay.
little. But for now, it just felt like, because it's an all-male
Yeah.
shelter, that was probably a safe way to at least start the project.
No, that makes sense. I'm not trying to
Yeah.
challenge.
Yeah.
Well,
Eventually, you could poll the females to find out who amongst them could be marked as they would be willing to work
Yeah,
with a
then
woman.
I was thinking that too, maybe
If you have
the
two women
comfort
or
level
three.
for the particular
Because I would
female.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like, once you get to know the people you,
The guests.
Right.
not just a guest, the other volunteers.
Well, true,
Relationships with
yeah.
the people.
Yeah.
Right,
And
good
so I,
point.
I will
You don't know
tell
who
you
you're
that
volunteering with. Good
Yeah.
point.
the volunteers that I know from other shelters, some of the, the people that do some of the hardest relational work are women who just like, I'm here and I belong here, and so do you. So let's sort this out.
Yeah.
And so I think once there's a confidence level, because we've done it, I think that people will start to say, oh yeah, this is first of all, it's safe, it's okay. We have lots of safeguards in place, and also it works fine. So I think it was an abundance of caution.
Yeah.
But I think it's also something that as we get experience with it, that we'll be able to tailor that a little bit. And I think your suggestion was really good. If you just don't feel comfortable with that, that's fine. I'm not going to assume you don't either. Like that might be okay.
And one other thing with the last shift is that they will also have to be like cleaning up. So they're gonna have to clean bathrooms and disinfect cots. Those basic things. The laundry, I think we're gonna save for the nighttime people. Because you'll have plenty to do from 7:30.
And the cots, I don't know if you didn't
8:30.
If you didn't go upstairs, the cots are up there. They're the cots that fold out. They're really they're very easy to clean. They're actually also pretty comfortable. So
They're all set up.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, they're-
Scott set them up today.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll see it soon enough, but this sign up thing, are you gonna have multiple entries for every shift between December 1st and whenever the
Yep.
shelter
Yep,
closes?
Yes.
it's already created. And
So you can sign up. So the point is, you sign up saying, all right. So I say, well, January is pretty open for me. February I'm going out of town and there's 4 other things, so I'm not going to sign up in February, but I'm going to take some blocks here in January where I know I'm okay, and then if it's not a code blue, then it's I'm going to have a movie with the wife, like I'm not going to go do that. But that's the way. The couple shelters that don't do that, they have to scramble every time, and it's crazy. So
Yeah, I can see it, but at the same time, if I'm available for an overnight, I may put down Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but if those are 3 code blue days in a row, I'm not gonna be able to make it overnight for those 3 days in a row, staying up all night.
But then you would
Yeah.
factor it in. You'd say, well, I can sign up for Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, because the worst case will be I'll have a day in between.
yeah.
Or you wanna say-
But then maybe you need people
I
on
wouldn't
Thursday.
sign up.
Well,
I
there's
would
the,
only-
didn't somebody suggest the idea of having an option to sign up for being on call, a volunteer on call?
I don't know.
It'd be nice to have that
was
list.
the old one. Yeah.
See what I mean? Like if you just got a call at 9 o'clock that somebody not coming in for the 11 o'clock shift, can you make it tonight?
Yeah.
You could put that in the notes of I think there's you have the ability to add some notes to
So
your sign up.
We use that in nursing, the sign up genius, the sign up for shifts.
Yeah.
So, and just like you said, you can have multiple people for each
Yeah.
period of time, and you can put in as many or as few as you want.
So figure yourself out. Like, what do you feel comfortable signing up for? And then if you say, well, I might be able to do more, but it depends, just let people know that. You can let them know that in
Yeah.
Sign Up Genius. But this is also why we split the night shift, because and this was on the advice of Trinity, that used to have 3 shifts. And so the middle shift, the night shift was a long shift, and the volunteers just said, if there's multiple days, and I feel like I can't sign up, but if I know that I can get 4 hours out of my night, 4 hours of sleep, then I'm okay. And so it just eased their volunteer pool when they moved to that. So that was their suggestion to the newer ones that have come online, to split that in half because of that, because, yeah.
So the things that we have been sort of thinking about is, so we need 10 volunteers a day for all of the shifts, so 7 days a week, we need 70 volunteers. There's 70 slots that we need to fill every week. And there are 20 plus weeks. Now, last year, I think from December 1st through April 30th, there were 60 Code Blue days.
Really?
Yeah,
Let's go blue again.
32.
32.
Wind chill of 32?
It's wind chill.
Yeah, it's wind chill.
Yeah.
The Department of Public Safety is the ones that call it, and they're very serious about paying attention to every kind of, like, well, the wind was coming out of the west. And so we just leave it to them. They call
And at
it.
what time do they make?
So we have been on them that you need to call early. In fact, they called one in October. I'm like, really? It was a stiff breeze, but we were all okay. They're working hard to call it by like 9 or 10 in the morning, and if it looks like it's a multiple day process, that they call it through as long as they think it's reasonable to call it. So their goal is to give people as much advance notice as possible. If they get it wrong and doesn't get quite cold, then we all say, well, what were you thinking? So it's like you have to be the weatherman and you wait 30 the time or
And
whatever.
then we'll all get an email when it's called? Is
Yeah.
that how the communication will go?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
When it's called off, right, Nancy? So if you're signed up, assume you're coming unless there's no code blue and volunteers are called off.
Which are they called? Are they called in or are they called?
Which way is
I'm
it going?
thinking they're called in.
Okay,
They
okay.
you will be
It's a good way to
notified if
confirm that
there's
they
a
are
code
aware.
blue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Also
So
serves as
only
a
if you're
reminder.
signed
Yeah.
up, we won't, actually, that's a good point.
I don't remember talking about
Whether we should,
I think you send to everyone,
Send it
because
to
I'm also
everyone.
thinking, do you expect that all 70 of those slots for, what it was, 20 weeks are gonna get filled?
oh, I'm hoping.
Really? You see, I see myself also signing up for some stuff, but two things could happen. One is something could come up,
Yeah,
you know, and I have to go in and delete, I know how to delete my entries. So I have to go in there and delete it, and now you've got an open slot that we probably need to let you know about. But also, I mean, I can't necessarily see 3 months out, 4 months out.
yeah, yeah.
Or,
Yeah, that's right.
you know, I only wanna do the 2 to 5:30, whatever it is, if it's really
So-
needed, you know,
So sign up what you know you can sign up for. And then so a couple things that I see happening in other places is if there's more of a need,
Right,
an email goes out, like there are still slots open, this is what they're open for. I sign up for weekend mornings to drive in Beacon of Hope because that's the time I know I can commit to and I'm not rushed. If I were to drive in the evening and the weekday, something could be coming up and then I would have to be my more grumpy self to really, I wouldn't show up the way I want to. So I sign up only for those. I don't sign up too far in advance because I don't want to say, oh wow, something came up and now I'm gonna have to unsign up. And so I don't wanna do that. So it might be nicer or it might be less stress provoking for the people who run Sign Up Genius for Prosper on the Beacon of Hope if my name was out for the whole time. I don't put it there because I don't want to commit and then not be able to meet that commitment. But I go back regularly and check, and Sign Up Genius regularly sends out, and it's AI. I mean, the world is so much smarter than I am. So I actually get an email that says, Mark, you're a driver. We need some drivers, right? So, but it doesn't say, Mark, make some lasagna because I'm not signed up for food. So it knows what I've signed up for, and it sends me an email about a need that's tailored to what
I don't know how that works, it's genius, right?
Well, the volunteer coordinators are Diane and Steve Granger, so you can expect
Yeah,
to
you'll get
hear
stuff from them, yeah.
And, yeah.
Yeah, well, that contact information, because I feel much more comfortable with the scenario you painted,
Yeah.
rather than me saying, okay.
Oh, yeah, no, sign up for,
Tuesday,
and,
month at a
and
time.
so-
A week at a time.
and so there have been a couple times too, when I've waited to go sign up for a Saturday and Sunday morning shift, and driving shift, and somebody took it, I'm like, son of a gun, like, I was all excited to see Frank again today. Right? So there's a sort of a middling spot where I'm like, well, Mark, you have to get your act together and decide what you can do, and then I go and sign up, so. Do what you feel, and then in terms of back-to-back stuff, like, I'm a guy who has to sleep at night, I don't need much, but I need some, and so too many nights in a row, I struggle, so I just know that about myself, so where in the scheme of this shelter do I fit? Find my place, sign up when I can.
I hear your story about it can be chaotic sometimes, but I also find that volunteers are usually very loving people. that
Oh, yeah,
help out.
absolutely, yeah,
And-
absolutely.
And one way or another, it gets
Yeah,
done,
yeah,
you know?
Yeah, so one of the things I've said is there's something for everybody to do here. You just gotta find your little niche and inhabit it well, so. We've gone a little long. I hope this has been helpful. Are there any last things that we need to answer at the end of this?
When you do sign up, there will be more information in the Sign Up Genius, and of course, when you show up, everything will be written out for you, and so.
Any chance we can do it dry run beforehand? Seriously.
Well,
I'd like to not show up my first night at 7:30 having not read
We
the
could
stuff.
do like a,
You know.
like a-
Soft.
you could come.
Yeah.
That's soft. Right.
Mark, can you show up next
Cold blue
Tuesday
plus
at
right. You just
7:30?
tell me I'll show up. I'll bring some stuff with me.
You could come on a shift that you're not signed up for and just kind of hang out
Yeah,
and
that's a
see
good
what
idea.
they're doing.
We're also having an open house.
Right, on December 8th from 1 to 3, we'll be giving tours.
So,
and-
right, so you'll meet people who are interested in the community, but you'll also see people beyond this room. Yeah,
That's right.
And I guess that would be a good, if we knew somebody that we might suggest
Yeah.
should get involved, that would be a
Yeah.
good way for them
Right.
to come and see it.
Right, yes.
Right, and also if you know other people who might be interested, we will have more trainings.
Yeah,
That's part of why I
So-
was taping this.
yeah.
I think you had, wasn't
December
it?
8th from what time to what time?
1 to 3.
Okay.
And that'll be posted on all the socials, as they
Yes,
say.
yes. If you're interested in staying any longer, I'm happy to show you through the house.
yeah, I'd like to see.
I think it's.
All right, well, thank you.
Already
guys.
wanted
Yeah,
to
Thanks for
thank
giving
you.
us an evening. I hope it was helpful.
It was, thank you.
Thanks.
That's great.
Thank you.